that says it's being recorded. Don't let it scare you. That always pops up. So thank you for attending today's webinar on diversifying for restaurant success with CudaCo Seafood House. Real excited to present this to you today. This webinar, excuse me, is being presented by the excuse me, by the Small Business Development Center, South Carolina Small Business Development Center. And if you are not familiar with SBDCs, it's an SBA program, Small Business Administration program, that offers assistance and outreach to small businesses with confidential, no charge business consulting and educational outreach, business education, which is what we're doing today. And also just a connector to business resources. So SBDC, there's about 21 locations around the state, and we have about 46 consultants. So feel free to reach out to us anytime for help with your business. And we do work with many restaurants and hospitality related businesses, which is one of the reasons we've come up with a series of webinars on hospitality. So this is the first in a hospitality series, which will include 3 webinars. We also will have a webinar coming up in a couple weeks on local food, using local food in your restaurant, which you'll hear a little bit about that today as well. And that will have a Department of Agriculture and someone representing their program fresh on the menu. And then following that, we'll have a webinar in another couple weeks on recruiting and retaining restaurant employees, which is a pretty big issue in not only the restaurant restaurant industry today, but as y'all know, it's kind of all over the place. So that should be interesting. This series has been sponsored by the South Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association, their marketing sponsor for us, and we appreciate their help and everything they do for the hospitality industry in South Carolina. I'm glad they were able to help us promote this program and get it out to their members and folks that are interested in their association program. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to Bryan Wheat, who is a business consultant at the SBDC. And he has a specialty in food systems, agriculture, and just food in general. And Bryan is going to introduce you to our speaker today and organize and take you through the program. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Bryan.
Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it. And welcome everyone to the webinar. We have quite a few participants today. That's great. I am excited about this as we begin the restaurant webinar series for a couple of different reasons. You know, in planning this, I end up being able to work with some folks, some great people that I have worked with in the past and have gotten to know well. And today is no different from that. I'd like to introduce to you Shaun Brian Sells, Chef Shaun Brian Sells, who is the founder and owner of CudaCo Seafood House. I've gotten to know Shaun over the years. We met over a niche crop, trying to talk a little bit about subtropical gourds and loofah gourds and integrating those into some of the cuisine here in the Charleston area. And since then, we've crossed paths quite a bit, and it's been a pleasure to work with him and see, you know, his path change and this business grow and develop, as it was a vision of his when we, I think, first met some time ago. So, Shaun, welcome here, and we do really appreciate your time today, and also look forward to hearing from you about your story and sort of discussing how you have made some pointed choices towards diversifying your business to make it sustainable and integrating some different revenue streams into that. So welcome, Shaun, and I'll hand it over to you if you would please just give us a little introduction. Tell us who you are, how you got into the business, and what a little bit about CudaCo.
Thanks, Bryan. Yeah, so I'm Shaun. It's a pleasure, everyone. A lot of people, some people know me as Brian, some people know me as Shaun, so that's how I sort of ended up going by Shaun Brian. I moved to Charleston a little over 3 years ago after Hurricane Irma and Maria hit my islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. John, where I'm from. And they sort of just like turned everything upside down, and I wanted to find some place that had Caribbean connections and had the love for food and had coastal community and all the things that I find near and dear to me in life. And Charleston was that place. It really spoke to me. And I found myself in love with this community, with this town, with the food scene. My background is in hospitality. I consider myself a hospitalitarian. I've worked in places from Martha's Vineyard all the way up and down the East Coast to Florida, all the way to the U.S. Virgin Islands. I went to college at Johnson & Wales University with a degree in culinary arts. And then I went to college after that at Florida Gulf Coast University with a degree in legal studies, which was a focus on commercial real estate, and a minor in art history. I have worked in fine dining restaurants, family owned, operated, mom and pop shops. I tried to really diversify my whole background and career in all the different areas of the food scene and hospitality, so I could really get a well-balanced idea of the industry. And when I moved here, I started working at Parcel 32 downtown, which was a great place for me to really like sort of learn the area, get to know people like Bryan, and work with all the amazing produce and land and sea bounty that is available here in Charleston. And it just was a really wonderful experience that created a ton of connections for me. And then right before the pandemic really took full grip, one of my suppliers who was selling seafood to me, Chris John, me and him got to talking a little bit about surfing and started going surfing together. We both realized we had a huge affinity and love for the ocean, and we started discussing the idea of starting CudaCo, which at the time we didn't know what to call it, but basically a seafood house that encompassed all things seafood and brought everyone together with a mission of sustainability in its backbone. So that's a brief synopsis of essentially what I do and my background.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things in between, I'm sure. Where does the name come from?
So Cuda is the second part of Barracuda, co meaning company. In the Caribbean, we call Barracudas Barra, and in the States, I hear a lot of people calling Barracudas Cuda. And then just really looking at what worked well together, using the Barracuda as a fish sort of as our mascot for sustainability, and it being a trash fish that is a really delicious fish. In certain parts of the Caribbean, we have issues with ciguatara poisoning and stuff like that. But in Charleston, you don't have those issues. So it was very appealing to me in terms of it being sort of the poster child of our company. And then looking at marketability, SEO, searchability, things like that, the way it sounds, and vetting it through a panel of people to sort of get their information in terms of the way it sounds. So CudaCo really rolled off the tongue for us, and we really felt like it was a brand that we could build more than just being a seafood company. We didn't really want to put blinders on it and really have one single identity to it as being like necessarily a seafood market or a fish restaurant. We wanted it to be able to sit on its own, and we wanted it to have the core of regenerative processes that we wanted to incorporate in the business and support in the future of helping sustain and rebuild the ocean, and just creating stewardship and advocacy around that.
Excellent. I really like that. So not just, Shaun's Seafood House, but something that can represent a number of different facets of the business.
Yeah, really not giving our business limitations, but at the same time making sure that it was focused.
Excellent. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what is it that CudaCo delivers currently?
So currently, and I'll sort of build on it, but currently we are a seafood market. So we offer beautiful array of different shellfish. We probably have one of the largest selections of oysters, single premium oysters in the Charleston area for a seafood market that you can go to and buy premium select oysters. A lot of places, if you want to get a very diverse assortment of them, you have to go to a restaurant. And here you can just go in there, and whether you want to take it out on your boat, take it for a picnic or home, or enjoying them right there in our shop. So on top of being a seafood market, we're also a full kitchen with counter service. And this just allows us to offer everything from the product to take away or to have on site. And we also specialize in smoking in-house, which allows us an area, or just like a cyclical cycle, to move our products so that we always have the freshest product on hand. I also had mentioned my business partner at the beginning, who was selling to me at another restaurant. And so he had his wholesaler's license, and we also offer wholesale seafood to local restaurants, selling to probably about 25 to 30 different restaurants around the Charleston area. And then outside of that, a lot of grab and go and, dry goods, anything basically involving seafood, whether it's oyster knives, spices, non-alcoholic beverages that go well with seafood, sea beans that are great garnishments with seafood, to ice and, the knowledge of a chef to give people that sort of old school butchery idea of how to deal and handle with the seafood. And then we recently just launched our beer and wine room on property, which we have our license where we can sell on site for consumption, and offer a few of the different bottles by the glass. And then all the bottles that we have, we also offer, but you can also take them home. So giving that one-stop shop for seafood that has all things that encompass it in one spot, but then also giving people the ability to sort of have a trusted source for not just freshness, but where it's sourced.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, you mentioned sea beans, and we did one of these webinars with Heron Farms not all that long ago as well, and so that's kind of an example of a very close-knit community of farmers, producers, and purveyors. So in my understanding of what you do, you make a pointed effort to choose local producers, and you're purchasing a lot of your fish from or seafood from those in your immediate area, right? So you kind of have that as one of your tenants.
Yeah, that's our primary focus, to bring people together. And in that model, we look locally first, and then regionally. And then when we're looking outside of the regions, then we're looking at its sustainability, which includes what's its footprint, its carbon footprint, how it's raised, what sort of practices are implemented feed-wise or different farming techniques. So it's really just about bringing a small community together and supporting each other, which I think helps to just garner more support for us as a business from the local community, because more of these people can stand behind us because we stand behind them.
Exactly. So our original plan was to take a brief tour of the site and the facility. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that today, which is quite all right. But I thought we could get some visuals and talk a little bit about some of the things you just mentioned, some of the offerings you have. So I'm going to share my screen right now and pull up your website and Instagram account, and we'll kind of take a look inside the shop and at some of the things that you're offering here. So here we are at your website. Are you able to see that now on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, so currently, this is your co-owner, correct?
Yeah, that's Chris John.
All righty. And those are some oysters there. Is that?
Yeah, so that was a North Carolina farm that we work with. And then in sort of the model of just creating the company, one of their biggest things in our core concept is just fresh and clean. We wanted to create a seafood market that not only gave you fresh seafood, but also gave you an environment that was clean, fresh, and we wanted to make sure everything from our website to our marketing and everything in between was in line with having this fresh and clean concept. For me as a chef running a lot of high-end kitchens and stuff, we have a very, strict, like, cleanliness standards, and just are always striving to be very sterile, very working and cleaning as we go. And so by creating the website, we wanted to just sort of create that feel and look. We're actually in our second phase with the website and development too, getting ready to launch e-commerce and more tabs and stuff. So this is more of just a holder. But when doing our imagery behind it, we made sure that we were sort of going with aesthetics and colors and things that just sort of weren't overcomplicated. So,
and you touched on this briefly, but we'll get to it as we start to talk about the future for you guys. But as you continue to stack things into your repertoire, you have plans to expand in the future. You just mentioned e-commerce, things of this sort, but we'll talk about the future in a little bit. I want to sort of put a pin in that.
definitely.
So we'll scroll down here. You mentioned that sort of long-term expertise that you offer in just through conversation, just through the curation of the things that are in the shop. Helping people with how to manage the seafood that they purchase through butchering in-house, things of the sort. So we kind of have an image of that there, which we'll see in your Instagram later after it's been cooked. But here's your menu. You mentioned some of those items. It looks like you have some smoked items, which you said you do in-house as well.
Yeah, so not just bringing the chef's perspective into it, but creating a fresh perspective on seafood. And instead of just having everything necessarily fried or something like that, we wanted to have things like ceviches, smoked fishes that have been preserved and cured using old world techniques that I really harnessed and developed in Martha's Vineyard behind bluefish, and now applying that to the local fish here, as well as the butchery techniques that I've been practicing for 11 plus years. And I think dry aging and in general has gained a lot of recognition over the years, especially now gaining some recognition in seafood, and that's something we slowly want to expand in. But just creating a menu that's really approachable, that has a lot of nostalgia, a lot of familiarity to it, but then just really high-end execution without all the fuss. That's what our menu offers. we have our fish fry, which people can come in and pick their fish right from the market display cases, and pick whatever size, and we'll weigh it. And if they want it baked, or if they want it pan seared or blackened, we offer that ability. And we also offer that expertise, like an old world butchery, to give them some recommendations and sort of guide them through it. Because I think for a lot of people, seafood can be very uninviting, and sometimes it's like the butcher counter too. Like, you almost feel like you have to know what you're going to ask, or they might like scour you with their eyes or something. And we like to be able to create an inviting environment where people can feel like they can come to us for the information. And if we don't know it, we can help find it for them or help guide them. So in doing that, we also offer different butcher techniques. Whether someone wants to smoke their own fish at home, we'll butcher it and do a ham style with the fish, and even rub it down for them with spices and stuff. So,
So really diverse and thoughtful in that. I'm going to switch over to your Instagram account, which kind of shows some of the things you've been talking about. There's your mascot, the very first post you guys put out.
Yeah, that was the very beginning of CudaCo. We just wanted to splash some images out there and sort of tease them and see what people's reactions were. That is sapodil wood. That's what we did all our wood in the shop with. And we have all floating shelves. And sapodil is also known as sapote in the Caribbean and through Central and South America, and in certain parts of Africa, which is really cool connection to Charleston because of all the influences of the Caribbean to Charleston and West Africa as well, but also a really cool connection for me. And the same with the Barracuda. I actually have a Barracuda tattooed on my arm, which I recently got, which is interesting because the story behind that is when I was younger, I actually had a pet Barracuda that lived under my father's sailboat, and it would follow us throughout the entire Caribbean. Even when we sail for like a month straight down island, it would follow us. And the Barracuda's name was Charlie. So therefore, our Barracuda at the shop's nickname is Charlie if we ever really make it into a mascot. And then it was also very sentimental for me, and sort of a ode to my grandfather who passed away during the pandemic, not from COVID, but just, it came time for him in his life to move on. And so it was sort of just a nice way to memorialize my grandfather.
That's excellent. I think something great to point out as we're talking here is how much of your personal story is woven into the business, and kind of how genuine that makes the business. In terms of, some of our listeners are here just trying to gain tidbits from you as far as how to better their business, right? And I think you can't really compete with the genuinely integrating yourself into the business if you're going to start, manage, run, be successful with a restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, it is all consuming. So I think the more that you can incorporate little pieces like that, one, they become talking points for you, to your guests, to your purveyors, your vendors. But then also it just helps you through the day in, day out to guide your business and sort of create a ethical backbone to it, and give it meaning, and really be able to stand behind your product, whether it be an actual physical item or a service. So, excuse me, I think that goes the same with my just love for the ocean and seafood. I genuinely care about the ocean. I genuinely care about seafood, where it comes from, the quality of it. And that plays over into where we source it. And something like that picture where you see the oyster with the oyster knife, that's a local knife maker that made one of my favorite oyster knives, Middleton Made Knives. And Quentin just started a new launch for this Kono knife, which he worked on producing over the last, I think 8 years or something. And basically it's a foldable chef's knife. And he was very kind to give me one of his first prototypes as sort of a memento and stuff, and makes amazing knives. And so when I support people that I care about, when I incorporate things that I care about, it makes the business sort of speak to me, and the business starts to create its own identity that gives you the answers that you need when you're in tough situations and you need to figure out what direction to go in. And that really gets us into developing the brand and the name. And that was a long process. And me and my business partner tried to take as much time as we could to really vet how we wanted it, make sure that he liked certain components of it, and that we vetted it across the board with friends and family and other people that we look up to in the business world.
Excellent. Yeah. We're going to scroll up here just a little bit and take a look at some other things. We kind of start to get into what your offerings are, as far as, oh, there's that whole fried fish, which is actually absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
But you got this picture here, and you've got your smoked fish, you've got, your raw seafood items, you've got a hot sauce that we were talking about earlier before we got on the panel, and so all these different products is a way that you have diversified your business. How you didn't start by doing them all at once. So kind of how does that process work for you? How do you stack on more items and stay focused on doing so?
I think it comes down to sort of like figuring out what is essential and what's just like secondary, and sort of breaking things up into set categories of threes. And there can be lots of different components under each one of those categories. But even from the products that we slowly built and added, and the different programs that we've incorporated into the business, we also built out the entire operation. We took over the building in August 15th and we're open December 15th.
Let's go there for a second while you're talking about it. We can
yeah, I think a little bit of the build out right there. And we did things from the sketches I did myself of the before and after the building. I made sure the building had a good backbone. I did all the construction inside myself from building out. That was the display counters, which anchored at the end, the register and where you ordered the food from the full kitchen, to just creating clean lines and the ability to clean the place day in, day out. And then using the local community to help me. That was one of our friends, Michael Eakins, who was helping me do the build out, who has experience as a contractor. And so not everyone necessarily has the acumen to be able to do all the work themselves, but if you can focus on what's important and get those things done and get the biggest impact projects done first, then what we're able to do is you're able to focus your energy towards the things that have the most impact and slowly build on the business. Because people will get behind a business and will support you if they see sincerity behind the business and a care and the effort to grow the business. So even the countertops, we did poured concrete countertops dyed with charcoal. And then coming back to this picture with all the different products, when we did our imagery, we wanted to use a local photographer to capture these images, and we knew Andrew Sabelko would be a great one to work with. And we wanted to showcase sort of a picture that had sort of all-encompassing products that we did, from the chips that we make in-house to the beverages that we like to support that we think go really well with seafood, and then showcasing our smoked product, which you can see our smoked salmon, which we use all pecan wood to smoke with. So we sort of giving it, once again, that backstory, something to talk about, something that has a local connection to the area. And then from mussels that are one of the most sustainable seafood products that you can grow, to local shrimp and local bull's bay clams and beeliner snappers from the local fishermen, to Proper Pepper Hot Sauce, which is a hot sauce company that I actually started before CudaCo. And that was like in the planning stage before we really found the building or anything. I needed something to do during the pandemic, and I had been working on this hot sauce for the last 10 years of my life, and it was just the perfect opportunity to take that downtime and turn it into a benefit and make it into something that could be useful for me, and help diversify my portfolio. Because one thing that I learned, especially from the pandemic, was that I didn't want to have all my bags in one basket. So it really pushed me to pursue solidifying the hot sauce recipe and working on branding for it and logo. And then the seafood market sort of became this greater brainchild of diversified business model, which has wholesale, retail, beer and wine, seafood, restaurant, but not just restaurant, and focusing on the counter service of this restaurant because of the lower labor involved in it, as well as a little bit less risky, because most restaurants are like 10% profit margin is phenomenal. And here with CudaCo, I developed the budget to be more of like a 20% profit margin to 25%, which is gets pushing into the higher profit margin of most industries. And wholesale really was able to balance us and allow us to be working on building the business and growing the business and still bringing in revenue, especially during the build out. And then once the build out was done, launching the market right away, focusing on a small, clean, minimal menu with beautiful fresh seafood, and creating a cycle for everything to run through from basically, essentially what that means is nothing sits in our display for more than 2 days. After that, it goes on cure, then gets smoked, and then ends up into our grab and go case, which you'll see in some of these pictures, smoked mussels or the smoked fish products. And then that turned into starting, as you can see down below a little bit, Brian, right here on the yacht, we started doing some offsite catering, and that was sort of like our first launch into catering, which created another avenue for us to create revenue that we didn't really have to build anything new. We just had to put a menu together and put pricing together and get ourselves out there and do some marketing, which I can talk a little bit more about too.
I wanted to ask you to sort of respond to a statement. A lot of times in agriculture, the folks that I work with find it's a requirement to diversify, that it's almost necessary in this day and age to come up with a very diverse business. It's difficult to just grow one crop, wholesale it. You place a lot of risk and a lot of uncertainty on that one thing. So just this statement, it's necessary to diversify in the current climate with your restaurant business. Do you think that's true or not?
No, it's 100% true, and there's small nuances that we learn every day about what that means to us in the market in terms of a great example would be crab prices right now. Blue crab prices are skyrocketing. They've all doubled, and just like a lot of farm to table restaurants are very seasonal, it's important for our seafood market to be very seasonal. There are certain things that we can constantly have, but in the last 2 weeks, we haven't been able to get the local oysters from Barry Island because they've been closed because of DHEC, because of all the rain, and that rain washes different contaminants into our water estuaries and stuff, and that makes the water unsafe. So even something that you think is really stable like that, that's consistent, you always have to be ready to diversify and change a little bit, and really have, what's important is being able to express that and tell your guest base that without making them feel like it's their issue, and you need to come across approachable and educational, but without like demanding that they learn it or know it or should know it. So we make sure that we do a lot of educational work in the shop with all of our teammates.
Mm-hmm. I see. And it seems like you're also educating through your marketing as well. So you do a lot of sharing in terms of the butchering, et cetera, the people that you work with, where things are coming from, the landscape and all that. So that's a point for you towards your customers and towards your clients too.
To give people a story behind something helps create value before it. And a lot of people sometimes overlook that. So for example, if you just offer a menu with goods and you have those prices to those menu items, then that's very black and white in terms of, here's a product that you can get and here's how much it costs. But when you add a story to those products, like you can see this one picture of these 3 snails that sort of look white, eggshells. Those are sea snails, and they're not really consumed, or there's not a big market in the East Coast for them. Most of them go over to the Pacific Rim area. A lot of them go to China and stuff because there's a larger market for more diversified seafood demand over there. And what we do at CudaCo is we want to offer people the experience and education of seafood to create a more diversified demand for it, so that we're not putting so much demand on certain species like beeline or snappers or tuna and fish like these, and grouper. And by doing this and making it approachable and showcasing it in our venue, we're able to create a market for it, sort of like you've seen happen to triggerfish and tilefish, which are both huge bycatches that were once very popular to eat and then lost their popularity, and now they're on a huge resurgence. But there's lots of other fish and seafood products out there that if we create that, then we're supporting the larger industry in a whole, which is making it more sustainable and making it last longer, and even helping certain species have recovery time, which gets into a regenerative program. Because if we sustain something that isn't where it needs to be to have longevity in it, then we don't want to sustain it. We actually need to do recovery work to it, and that's where I get into regenerative.
You mentioned earlier, Shaun, I mean, this has come up quite a few times, is the sustainability in your business and how that's integrated. But we also talked earlier about the vertical integration for yourself. So being your own supplier, and you mentioned that you guys have a lease on some oyster beds, and you're actually doing that. You're helping to rebuild those oyster beds, right? So can you talk a little bit about the vertical integration in that sense? You're supplying yourself with oysters.
So we manage 2 oyster leases, and my business partner has a very good idea of the clusters in Charleston. He's been working in them for a long time. And we were looking at the beginning of last season, oyster roast season, and the amount that they were going to allow to be harvested for that year on the state leases, we knew that they'd run out quickly. And so something that we did in vertical integration was by having these leases that we manage, that we also replenish and help restock with seed, we're able to have a profitable producing product, even when we're losing or when we need to back off of the state leases, we were able to still have a product that we could offer for during oyster season. And when a lot of other people were out of clusters, we were able to still have it and still producing revenue from that. And then we also wanted to make sure that we supported one of the oldest local families who does cluster harvesting, the Brown family, and we were able to allow them to go and harvest off the leases that we managed, which was just really a cool cycle to see and support. So not only were we still creating revenue for ourselves, but we were also still creating revenue for the harvesters that we use.
Right. And so we have gotten a sense, and I'm going to switch back over to the speaker view here, unless you have anything else to talk to, or we can come back to it.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I did see in the chat room that there is a space for anyone to ask any questions they may have, and we'll have some time at the end to address those. So please type any questions you have into the chat box, and we'll get to those. Thus far, we've talked about a lot of the benefits of and the ways that diversification really positively impacts your business. I think about some farm to table restaurants I know, and the challenges in ones that have their own farm, so to speak. So the challenges in doing that, and it can be very difficult to keep up with both areas. So can you speak just a little bit to some of the challenges of this, of doing this? You've got your oyster beds, you've got a lot going on, and it's great and it's important to your business. How does it cause you struggles?
Oh man. So the more components that you create in your business sort of become the more outlets for struggles and challenges. And in every stage of the process, we've definitely found challenges, whether it's permitting with the town that we might have overlooked with like our sign or something like that, which was a little bit of a struggle. And so some of these are just, rolling with them, making sure you always lead with kindness and sincerity. That goes a long way in the world today, to be genuine and kind, and to have a mission that supports more local industries. You'll find that people are more willing to work with you and help, rectify any of these issues.
Yeah, you have strong relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And to maintaining those relationships with your vendors, whether it's your oyster men and women or your suppliers for sea beans, and creating these relationships and help cross-marketing them so that when you need something, they can help maybe drive a little business to you. Because there's been points where we've had lows in businesses and in business, and then we'll find that by reaching out to other of our vendors or reaching out to some people that I've worked with in the past at other restaurants who are influencers, come into the shop and gear up some marketing and do some blast, and all of a sudden you can see a direct correlation in your business going up. All the way to just, missteps, whether it was checking a certain box or filling a second form out. And then having something where it's a seafood market, you've got to manage a staff, and managing a staff is never easy. We try to create a team that supports and lives through the same model that we've created, so that it's just through and through. And by being genuine and it being my honest reflection of me in the business, helps people get behind it and be a part of your team and really help stand behind it. But we have someone out sick, then we have to rely on other people on the team to sort of step up to the plate. And I think part of the biggest way that I've learned to get through a lot of my challenges is by stepping back, stepping away, allowing for mistakes to be made, and then coming together as a team and really discussing them, analyzing them, and seeing how we can do things in the future. Not necessarily better, because it might just be different. So there's definitely a lot of growth that has to happen, and a lot of patience that you have to have throughout the whole process.
Yeah, that's a topic. I mean, it could be a whole nother webinar, and it is and will be here in the next week or so, finding quality teammates and retaining them. It seems like your approach is to really seek out the folks who are walking the walk, so to speak, and buy into the mission and goals of the business that you've created. I also recognize too that you have some team members, a business partner, and other team members whose skills you leverage too. You have folks who have backgrounds in fisheries or ties to the sea in some ways or other, and so identifying those skills along with the ethos that kind of matches with the business, it seems like something that you've been doing.
Yeah, it sort of like naturally happened, and I think we just started to recognize it, and then that's sort of become part of our hiring process. Is, you know, how do you feel about the ocean, and how do you feel about seafood? How passionate are they about it? And then, do they have a good attitude? And, you know, did they show up for their interview on time and stuff like that? Are they, you know, and where do they fit in? Because just because someone isn't necessarily a 9-to-5er doesn't mean that we don't have a role for them. You know, there's so many different components that can help grow your business, from social media to marketing to logistics, transportation, deliveries, to actually running the shop. I have a couple people that are very skilled in culinary arts. I have some people that are just very passionate about seafood. And then my business partner, who me and him are worlds apart, different, but we complement each other, and he's always been a champion for me, which is a very great thing to have in a partnership, is someone who supports your ideas and your concepts.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's not easy to check all those boxes or to approach that. And it's something that comes with years of experience. You know, you've talked a lot about your history, and you've been in the industry for quite some time. Some folks that we probably have on the panel today are new to the restaurant industry. And so I guess I'm wondering if you have any advice for folks that don't have such a wealth of experience behind them to be able to just kind of pop up and do all these things. You know, what kind of advice do you have for that scenario?
My biggest advice is, you know, in this industry, I think I've been in it for a little over 15 years now. You know, take your time, vet things, you know, create a plan, double check your plan, but then use resources. Use resources like here right now with the SBDC. I can tell you right now, most people in the industry are more than willing to give advice and help new businesses out and answer questions. And there's a lot of resources out there, and I can't say enough about them to try to use those resources instead of just figuring it out on your own and necessarily Googling it. I think that Google's a great tool, but I also think that it's easy to get lost in it and sort of get diverted from what your mission was to start with. So sometimes I think just speaking to another human about it, letting them know, getting a basic understanding of where you need to go, the direction you need to go, and the information you're looking for can be very helpful.
That's a great point. Yeah. That's absolutely a great point.
And the last part, I think, Brian, for the hospitality industry, especially for restaurants, is you need to know your finances. Too many people start doing these things without really having a good foothold of having an inventory, having, you know, items properly cost. You need to know how to cost menu items. You need to know how to do recipe conversions and cost conversions, and you need to know these things before you go to selling your product, because you need to make sure that you're hitting a budget, make a budget, and be able to.
That's a great point. If you want to do hot sauce or you want to do smoked fish, you may be very passionate about it. You may think it's a wonderful idea, and your grandmother might think it tastes great. But if you can't financially make sense of it, then it might not necessarily be the right or best path. So kind of what's your barometer for that? Like, do you have to make a certain amount on a product? Or I know that this will be detailed to get into this, so we don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but what's that decision process look like for you?
I think the biggest thing is really like two things. Is one, once you understand what it costs you to make it, including your overhead, your labor, don't take away from the time that it took, the energy or the amount of years that you spent developing the skill. But you can't necessarily charge them for your college degree or something in your one hot sauce.
Oh, if we could, that would be.
But what you can do is know the cost, your time that it took to put into it that was realistic in terms of, like, if I do this and I have good production with it, I'm not wasting a bunch of time. This is what it costs me. And you can put that price. And then once you see that price, if you say, oh man, I'm like way higher than this, Tabasco or Crystal, who might be a major company, well, then your value comes in your story. It comes in, that you're a small business owner. It comes in the form of that you're local. It may come in the form that you're using local products or local knowledge. And these things have value. And if you can convey that story in your marketing behind your product, then you can charge a lot of money for things and people are more than willing to pay for it. So it's definitely that's sort of the way that I judge things. I'm not the cheapest seafood market in Charleston, but we're very good at butchery. We're very consistent in butchery. And we have a lot of back information and approachability to our business model, which people really appreciate.
Yeah, you've created this conglomerate of things that support whatever added value you pass on to the customer. They know they're getting not just a cut of seafood, but they're getting the whole package, and they're participating in the whole package. Have you had examples of where you've had a concept like, gosh, I really want to make this jerk chicken rub seasoning, but and went down the path and then it just didn't make sense?
Yeah, we did. We especially had that issue with our chips. We make our own chips in-house, and we do a Cajun vinegar seasoning dusted on them. And we were using this one product that I was just very adamant about using. I really liked the spice blend. And financially, it just wasn't making a lot of sense for the value added that the chips give. And we just had to figure out some different avenues we still make them in-house, but we're not using that spice blend anymore. And, we had to make some adjustments and some changes. We did it, and we were able to be more profitable with it. But then things like, we carry a sweet Reaper hot sauce that my friend makes. We decide to carry his product because we want to support him and we love his hot sauce. It's one of my favorite on raw shellfish in the world. And we don't make very much money off of it, and it's an expensive product. So, but sometimes you create balance by having something that's more profitable, and then having things that are less profitable that have more value in terms of what they offer and the story behind them, or maybe just because you really want to support that person or product.
Excellent point. Excellent point. I want to point out that we got about 4 minutes left here, and I have a couple more questions for you. If anybody is listening here and has questions, please do pass them on to the chat area, and Shaun will will answer them for you. One of the other questions that we touched on a little bit earlier is just what's next as far as, you know, further diversification. You mentioned e-commerce, and so what are the next things that you're planning on doing?
Yeah, so since we've launched beer and wine lately, and that we definitely saw a revenue increase when we did that, one of our next steps is to launch e-commerce and really start with the basics, from dry goods that we already carry in the shop, from merchandise to stickers to hot sauces to spices, and then slowly get into smoked fish and oysters and ship them nationwide. Outside of that, we are expanding our offices upstairs, and it's a one office right now, and we'll slowly expand that into 6 office rooms where we can grow our wholesale and keep increasing the revenue and dealing with more restaurants than we do currently. And then next door, we're trying to acquire the lease on the building next door, in which we are going to work on building first the outdoor area into a raw bar, and then the older seafood building, which is much smaller than the one we're in, with the people who own the property before us. There's been a seafood market there 30 years before, and building that out into a high-end restaurant that's got a real casual, comfortable vibe, that's 5 days a week, seafood, vegetable forward, and has the same staff every night, because we're closed 2 days a week and closed like a month and a half out of the year, which sounds crazy, but you can create a lot of consistency and really amazing product by doing that. So that's sort of where the future of it is, and hopefully, you know, creating CudaCo into something more of a global brand that stands for ocean stewardship, and really like just, you know, supports maybe starting our own 401c3 that we're giving back to, you know, oyster farmers, is something we're near and dear to, because a lot of things go back towards the ecosystems or to the oyster reefs, and then the little guy gets overlooked, like the oyster harvester. So
Yeah, that's something else I kind of had as a point as well. I've seen over the course of you guys developing this, you've worked with some nonprofits directly, you know, and so that's another thing that you've done. Didn't you do a dinner or you were promoting a dinner perhaps with some ocean stewardship organization?
yeah, so I actually worked with the James Beard Foundation, which is a national foundation nonprofit, and did a lot of work with them in terms of ocean sustainability for the Smart Catch program. And then I did some stuff in Atlanta supporting different sustainable seafood initiatives. And I constantly just trying to do outreach, whether it's with Charleston waterkeepers, surf riders, and all these things, one, create more value in my business, but they also directly support the longevity of my business. And so we try to create, we try to be involved in all of that. Me and my business partner both have to sit on a 401c3 nonprofit of our choice. And then also the way that our model is in our business for sustainability, from recycling all of our oyster shells to having a zero waste program where we don't throw away any shrimp shells, any fish bones. We make fish stock out of them. We're working on turning fish scales into fertilizer for people to buy, to creating our own dog food line using our trim waste from tuna, like bloodline and stuff, created dog food. So
wow, very comprehensive, incredibly diverse, and I think one of the big takeaways is just identifying those that are in your industry and in your sphere, and actively supporting them. You know, that whole adage, the rising tide will what is that? Rise all ships. But anyways, just identifying the organizations, businesses, and people that are in your sphere and support your business, and sort of pay it back, pay it forward.
Yeah.
We did have one question, and someone asked if you'd be interested in any products that are grown in an aquaponics system.
Yeah, essentially what I'm hearing is, like supporting systems that are just continually creating a closed system. And growing vegetables, herbs in aquaponics is amazing. You can end up with a very closed circle system. I love little niches like that. I will always supporting people, especially small producers, when they have a solid business plan and they're able to keep up with production and supply and demand. I actually prefer to move on to the next small person. Why the bigger people keep growing and they got their traction, I would rather move on to that next small person and support them and help them grow as they get bigger. So absolutely.
That's fantastic. And we're 2 minutes over time here, but I think that was all for the questions from the panelists, but we did cover a lot of ground today. One thing that we like to do is just let people know how to get in touch with you. You mentioned, small businesses supporting each other if at all possible, and someone would like to reach out to you. How can they get in touch? And I can put it in the chat here.
Well, probably the most direct way, you can either follow me on social media. On Instagram, it's at Chef Shaun Brian. I'll type it in the messages here. And then, of course, always please come in and check out CudaCo on Folly Road at 765 Folly Road. On my social media, on Instagram, it's very easy. Connect with me. Oh, thanks, Brian. I'm active there. I use it as a marketing platform. It's not, I'm really not about the personal side of it. You do get to see a little bit of my life, which is, definitely, I sort of have embraced the public side of what I do, which I think adds value to my businesses, but it's more about the business for me.
Yeah.
And outside of that, I think the website, you can directly reach us at hello@CudaCo.com.
hello@CudaCo.com. Excellent. Well, Shaun, as always, it's a great pleasure to sit and chat with you.
Same, Brian.
I really appreciate your time today, and I know everyone else does. We've got a few thank yous coming through, and this is recorded and can be, we'll mail it to everybody or email it to everybody who participated today, so they can come back and visit it in case you forgot any of the ideas that Shaun kind of presented today. But thank you so much, and thank you to our sponsors, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Same to the sponsors. Thank you, Brian.